to see so many of you bright and early. I noticed that many of you are youth want-to-bes, and not too many of the youth have learned the early to bed, early to rise technique yet. That is one of the ways of optimizing mental health. In fact, my brother was just speaking to me a couple of weeks ago. He lives in the state of Washington. But as we're aging, we're starting to see youth from a little different perspective. And he told me youth is such a wonderful thing. It's too bad it has to be wasted on young people. And often we don't appreciate the youthful spirit sometimes until we start to lose it. And then at that point we wish we had a lot better frontal lobe when we were young people, as we have developed better frontal lobes as adults, where we could have actually had and made better choices. And really this talk today is about enhancing or optimizing your brain. And this is something that actually the world is also quite interested in. It should be of most interest to people that are Christians. But recently, well, it's been in the last few years. I'll just tell you a little story about how it started, but we don't, because of the speaking schedule I have and the medical schedule that I have, in fact, some people have criticized me for this, we don't really take vacation as a family except for 1 week a year. And often there's between speaking appointments, we just had a 4-day vacation here in South Africa because there was no talks between Tuesday and Friday. And so when we had that opportunity, we had our child with us, and we actually had a nice time seeing your great continent here, or at least portions of it. So we might sneak in sometimes when we're speaking, but we're here for a purpose, and we're here to really better the lives of people that we're speaking to. And the 1 week that we tend to take for vacations is something that I don't think you have here in Africa. In fact, I haven't heard about it at all. But our family very much enjoys going to the very tall mountains and doing snowboarding and skiing. Do you have any of that in Africa? Oh, you do? Sort of. Okay. So we were going to, and since we've done this for years, we like to find the resorts that are the nicest. It's our 1 week where we have special time together, and so we'll often rent a large house, and we'll invite friends of our boys and others. There might be 2 or 3 families staying in a house that holds 18 people. That's a ski-in, ski-out facility on the mountain. So that way we don't have to, travel to the mountain every day. We just get our skis on and we go to the chairlifts, and then often these are big enough ski resorts where you don't have to really get on very many chairlifts. You can ski for miles on different mountains that interconnect there, primarily in Colorado. And in Colorado, there's 2 primary, there's actually 3, but we've skied primarily 2 of them that are the higher-end resorts. It's called Vail, Colorado, which is the largest ski resort in North America, and then Beaver Creek. And what we noticed when we started skiing these resorts the first time is we were going up the chairlift with a Major League Baseball player. Then we were going up a chairlift with the chief executive officer of Abercrombie and Fitch, which you may not know about that, but that's a big fashion store in America that primarily caters to young people. And when I'd fly in my little humble plane to the Vail airport, we noticed that there were private jets flying in every minute, coming at the Christmas holidays, and their families would be emptying out, and they would be coming to Vail, Colorado. So we realized this was a very elite group, primarily multimillionaires coming to this place at this time of year. And we thought, in fact, Ellen White talks about this. She says that we have had a tendency in our church to neglect the rich. She talks about the neglected rich, and she says it takes special planning and care is to know how to reach the wealthy. And by the way, does the Lord want to reach the wealthy? He wants to reach everybody, but he loves the wealthy as well. And the wealthy also have a significant amount of influence. As owners of corporations and multiple employees, they have significant influence. But she tells us this. She says they will not come to an evangelistic series in your local town. And primarily, the very wealthy will stay away from that. Now, the reason why they're staying away from it is because they are well known in their community, and if they show up, it's going to be reported to everybody that they were there, and they don't know enough to know whether they should support that with their presence or not, and so since they're not sure and they don't want to be reported, they stay away. But she says there are ways in which they can be reached. And she says one of the ways is if you are an employee of them and you get very close to them and show your love and concern and care, you will be able to have their ear in opening up the things of eternal truth. And so often it's a one-on-one type of situation when you have the opportunity to get close. But she says it doesn't have to be one-on-one. The other thing that they will actually come to are things related to health. And so I was reading, it was mentioned that I'm president of Weimar. I've been that since 2008. And by the way, there are some great things that are happening at Weimar. Weimar has changed a lot since 2008, and we have a great pre-med program. In fact, if you are planning on being a doctor in America, I can think of no better place to go than Weimar, because you'll not only be able to get into medical school and get high scores on the MCAT, we teach the hard sciences there, but you will learn nutrition and lifestyle medicine and be able to shadow us in depression and anxiety recovery and diabetes, so you don't have to wonder whether the health message is voodoo or not. You've seen it work in people's lives. You've seen the results dramatically improve that are measurable results. And then you also know how to go from health to Him and see the spiritual awakening that occurs in the people that come to Weimar for reasons of health. And so it is the best pre-med place to train, because there's no other institutions, either ours or the world's, that has a pre-med program associated with a top-notch lifestyle center. You might have heard of New Start. That's where New Start came from, was Weimar. It's kind of one of the flagship lifestyle centers that remains scientific and also very committed to the church. Some people think, well, Weimar is self-supporting. Is it committed to the church? Well, our board members are all leaders of the church. Mark Finley is on the board, and Jerry Page and many of the General Conference officials. In fact, Ted Wilson loves to support our institution because he believes that the message that needs to go to the world has to be integrated with the health message in order for it to have power. And so he refers a lot of students to us, and actually he wouldn't mind me saying this, although since we are separate from the church itself, he actually contributes himself out of his own free will offerings to things that are going on at Weimar, as well as other officials. So, but of course it's not church funds per se. But he has, and our conference is so connected with us as well, that the General Conference actually treats us as an institution that is like the church. The conference has given us full approval. And so if a missionary kid from the General Conference wants to go there, the church supports that in precisely the same manner as if they would go to one of our other institutions. So there's a lot of financial support as well. So we're not at all opposed to the church. In fact, we always team up with the church in helping the church to do better as far as evangelistic focus, and we do have a strong evangelistic focus in the community. I mentioned yesterday in Johannesburg, we have a 4-month training course there that we would encourage. We have a professional track and a non-professional track. It's just 4 months that will launch you to being very effective in some of the things that I'm mentioning here in regards to the story. But Weimar is very committed to spreading this Advent message to the world. And the best way to do it is to get educated on knowing how to reach all classes, including the higher classes. But back to what we were talking about. Since I became president of Weimar in California, I noticed there were a lot of Seventh-day Adventists in California. You go to any small town and you'll see this big Adventist church. And, other places in North America, it's not that way. And sometimes you go into a medium-sized town and you see 3 Adventist churches. And so Adventism has really built up in California, and it was nothing in 1900. So I wanted to know a little bit of the history of this. How did this happen? And I found out that our pioneers, back in 1900 and a little bit before, would go into the cities and villages of California and put on just 3 meetings. What were those 3 meetings? It was a meeting, the first meeting was on the second coming of Christ. The second meeting was on law and grace. And the third meeting was on the Sabbath. And that was it, those 3 things. And by the way, if you believe in the second coming of Christ and you believe in the Sabbath, what are you? You're essentially a Seventh-day Adventist. And then from those 3 meetings, they wouldn't baptize anybody at the end of those meetings. But at the end of those meetings, they would have Bible workers that were trained to work with the interests. And so they would generate they would have a huge tent set up. Those 3 meetings were very powerful, and then they had powerful Bible workers studying the rest of the truths of the Bible. And when those truths of the Bible were accepted and the person was willing to put all on the altar for the Lord, then the baptisms occurred. And that's how Adventism spread like wildfire in California, village after village, town after town. Now, what has happened now that it's 3rd generation Adventism, there's not a lot of evangelism going on. Most of the churches, you find out, well, the grandparents came in, around that time, and, their daughter and son was an Adventist, and now the grandson is, and so they're more cultural Adventists. They don't necessarily have the all-on-the-altar mentality that their grandparents had, and so the church has weakened somewhat, but yet it's still there. So I thought, well, those 3 truths are vitally important. And we only have 1 shot at these wealthy individuals. Only 1 shot. What if during our vacation we put on just those 3 meetings? So I mentioned it to my family. I said, we're having a vacation, but why don't we just put on 3 meetings, those 3 truths that have to get out to the masses for the wealthy people. And my son, I should have known this. I've done the health message all of my life, but sometimes even us as adults can get a little off base. And my second son said, Dad, you might get 1 or 2 or 3 of those to show up if you tell them what you're going to be talking about and titling it that way. But you're not going to get a lot of these wealthy people coming to hear when we tell them that we're going to be talking about the second coming of Christ, the Seventh-day Sabbath, and law and grace. And they're going to probably figure out it's Adventism and that you're Adventist and all of that. So he says, what I would suggest is you go in with the health message first. And I thought, well, there has to be a way of combining this. So I said, okay, we will put on a series called Optimize Your Brain, and we'll have 3 nights. The first night will be how to enhance your IQ. And one of the things that showed in regards to how to enhance your IQ, keeping the 7th-day Sabbath enhances your IQ. It also enhances your EQ when you keep it in the biblical way. And so instead of waiting to the last night, we'll bring up the Sabbath the first night. And of course, we'll talk about other things in regards to optimize your brain, in regards to diet, in regards to entertainment, and those type of things. And you know what I found out? You might think, well, why are millionaires? They're already millionaires. They're successful. Why are they going to be interested in optimizing your brain? Here's what I have found out. The better brain that you have, the more you are interested in making it a great brain. And so you want to actually continue to foster your brain power. And so really we could call it optimize your brain from good to great, because these guys have good enough brains. They've come up with good inventions. That's why they are millionaires. They know how to lead people. They're executives and those type of things. So how to enhance your IQ. The second night was how to enhance your EQ. And some of you have heard the presentation that I gave Friday night in the auditorium on that subject. But how to enhance your EQ, when you actually boil it down to the underlying attribute, it actually has to do with law and grace. And in regards to how to enhance your EQ, there are great stories from the Bible that come alive that get them interested in the Word of God, that present case reports in regards to emotional intelligence. So we can get them interested in the Word of God through the case reports, and we can also be able to reveal the principles of law and grace. And then the third talk that I gave was one that they had a lot of interest in, and it is one that I haven't talked about here, called nutrition in the brain. I've mentioned things about nutrition in relationship to IQ and EQ and things, but there's a lot of information in regards to nutrition in the brain. But we had only rented the hall for 2 nights. We knew we had a big house with a great kitchen there. And, we didn't have a big marketing budget. And, this is Vail, Colorado. The town of Vail, Colorado is probably, 25,000 people at the most that service Vail. And so what we did do ahead of time is we had our son's friends go. And, you can get people to be able to do marketing for you if you pay for their ski day that day. And so we had some of the young friends come up, and they could ski, but then during the non-ski hours, they were up putting up posters. They were going into businesses, letting them know what was happening, so the Vail community would also know about it. And then the television station found out about it, and the first day I arrived there, I was going to be speaking that evening, but the first day I arrived, they wanted me on TV to interview me. So I got a free interview on the Enhance Your IQ, Enhance Your EQ program. And they had me on 2 or 3 different times that morning. And so the people that were staying there who had come in, a lot of times they look at the morning news. And so the only morning news you can get in Vail, Colorado, in the local station, is the Vail TV News. And so they heard about us there. So television helped us out. There was one free radio announcement as well. And then we had a lot of support from the Vail community in putting this on. And then one of the advantages of going skiing is you can actually choose. Often we would go up as a family, unless our family wasn't down at the bottom of the hill together. And you know how the young boys are. They want to get up to the top of the hill again. So they'll go in with someone else to get up to the top of the hill. But we decided as a family we were all going to go in the singles line. And, during Christmas, there's a lot of people there, and so the singles line works faster because there's usually 4 people or maybe 6 people going up on a chairlift, and the family might be just 3 that are there, and so they're saying, hey, we need more people up the mountain, let's take from the singles line. So the singles line goes faster, you'll actually get up the hill better, but once you're on a chairlift with individuals, they can't get off, and you have And you have 3, sometimes 8 minutes with them to talk about the upcoming seminar that evening. and you can have brochures in your pocket as well. And, it was kind of interesting. Justin, I mentioned the first time we did this was several years ago, and I know Justin one time, he's 11 now, but he would have been 7 or 8. I think it's been 3.5 years ago. He just turned 11, so he would have been 7. And I know one time he got separated from us somehow, and he fell on the mountain, on one of the very steep portions of the mountain, and he lost his ski, and he didn't know where we were at, and we didn't know where he was at, and he started crying there on the mountain. And one of the gentlemen saw him there and helped him get a ski on, and was very nice about that. And as his tears were drying up and he was ready to go out the mountain again, he said, "Here, sir," and he pulls out his brochure and hands him a brochure about Optimize Your Brain that evening. And of course, it's unobtrusive. You can tell him what it's about. It truly is about Optimize Your Brain. But what we were surprised at is that every one of our attendees, we had about 70 attendees that night, but we did demographics on them. Every one of them was either a multimillionaire or they had a multimillionaire with their teenage kids that were there. We saw these multimillionaires pressing to the front and making sure that their kids sat in the front row, because they wanted their kids to be able to get into Ivy League schools and to be as successful as they were. And so they were all ears in regards to Optimize Your Brain. And what was amazing is, I recognized the interest of this group. And we had told them, because everyone wants to know, here you are on your vacation, and you're going to a seminar you weren't planning on going on. Normally you're there to be there with your family in the evening and to have vacation time. So we told them it was only going to be 90 minutes. And what happened is, when I see that people are interested, I have a tendency to tell more stories and kind of connect with them. And so I went the full 90 minutes, and then I apologized to them, and I said, you know what? We don't have time for questions, because I told you in the program, it's also advertised, only 90 minutes. So I said, any of you are free to leave. I know it's vacation time. You can go to your condos, in your houses and your other places, and be with your family. But anyone who wants to stay, you can stay for questions. Not one person left. And they pumped me with questions for 30 or 40 minutes. And do you know what they pumped me the most of in regards to questions? Was about the seventh-day Sabbath. They wanted to understand that Sabbath. And they wanted to understand how it worked. And in the circa septem rhythm, we went into the 7-day rhythms that we have, even as plants and animals and all of those things. And they wanted to understand, so what did the studies show? What does it mean to actually keep the Sabbath? I mean, what don't you do? And those sorts of things. And in the middle of this discussion, about 8 minutes into it, because there were a lot of questions on the Sabbath, one woman who was a Jew stood up and said, for years I've wondered why my brother has made a lot more money than I have. And I've also wondered why he has better emotional intelligence and social relations than I have. But I just figured it out from this seminar. We were both raised Jews. He keeps the Sabbath, and I don't. And she sat down. And so she just basically confirmed by her own experience in failing on that point in regards to why is it that one succeeds over another. The second night on emotional intelligence, even more were there. We had our family fanned out, and so we had more people that were aware of it. Again, multimillionaires. But what surprised us, we had to rent the Ritz-Carlton, which is the most plush hotel there, and it's something that you can ski into. It's a beautiful resort there. And so, it did take expense for 2 nights of doing this. And then the third night, we had it at our house, and we thought, how are we going to be able to, we know there might be a drop-off here. But we did nutrition in the brain, and we fed them a meal as part of that. And half of that group actually came to our house to learn nutrition in the brain. And once they're in your home, you get to know them a lot more. You get to talk to them, you're having conversations with them. And the very next night was Christmas Eve. Now, we had finished with the seminar, but we realized we had a lot of interest here among the very wealthy. And we said, tomorrow night is Christmas Eve, and we know that's a very special time for all families. But just in case you want to come, we're going to invite you to a frontal lobe enhancing service in regards to music, because we had talked about music in frontal lobe. And we're actually going to do a frontal lobe enhancing exercise that will fit with the Christmas season. And so if you have any desire at all, you're certainly welcome to come and join us on how we would begin a Friday evening Sabbath. And I guess the disappointing thing about it is many people wanted to come, and then they would actually call us. They felt committed at that point, even though they didn't say they were going to come, but they'd say, we really want to come, but my wife will not let me out of this home. It's Christmas Eve, and she won't let me come. I am so disappointed. I would like to come. But, 8 of them ended up coming. And so they saw the opening of the Sabbath. We read the Luke story of the coming of Christ the first time, and we talked about how Christ, the Bible will say that Christ will come the second time, and the shepherds who were ready, but not the elite, the shepherds who were ready to receive him, would be a symbol of those who were ready to receive, those who were interested in Bible prophecy, those who had a strong work ethic. By the way, the shepherds had a strong work ethic because they were willing to stay up all night for those sheep. But they also had their priorities straight. They left those sheep at night to see the Lord, so they had their spiritual priorities straight. And they were studying out of Daniel. That's why they knew it was that time. And so we were able to bring up the second coming as well. And those people were very endeared to us, and us to them. And so what I would recommend, in fact, we've done that every year since that's been such a positive experience. Whenever we're going on vacation, the kids actually want to do it and want to put on the Optimize Your Brain. So we're calling it Vacation Series, and we're coming out with a product for everyone to be able to do this with DVDs and workbooks, and you could go to any vacation land. And so my kids are also into golf now, so they want to go to a big golf resort where the elite are at as well, and put on a series there that are special vacation times. But just to let you know, Optimize Your Brain is something that the world, thoughtful people in the world, are interested in. And by the way, we're only going to be getting thoughtful people to join our group, particularly when it becomes more unpopular than it is now to be a believer in the Word of God. And so these are the type of people that have the ability to think and understand our message and to be able to embrace it and to be able to put all on the altar. And we've had many of those individuals since that time. I don't necessarily keep count, but there are a couple of families that have actually come into the truth, with that being their first exposure, and with us continuing to be in contact with them. So I know I don't necessarily have a lot of time here, particularly with that story, but I would encourage you, since many of you are new from this week, last week I gave a seminar in the youth on, it was similar to Optimize Your Brain. It was called How to